Hello and welcome to the Ruby and Pearls Knitting Podcast. My name is Leah and I'm coming to you today with episode 22 of my standard format podcast. I am coming to you from West Wales in the UK, where I live with my partner and our two dogs Ruby and Pearl. I will insert some pictures of Ruby and Pearl here. Thank you so much if you're a returning viewer. And if you're new here, which is relatively likely because I've had a massive influx of new subscribers, then thank you so much for joining me. I really hope you will enjoy this content. You will have probably found me through my latest pattern roundup video, which is something else I do on this channel. And I was so happy to see how many of you really enjoyed that pattern roundup. If you haven't seen it, I was talking about colourwork sweaters that are not round yokes, because I have a lot of sensory issues with round yokes and they don't fit me particularly well. And I was a little bit nervous about putting that video out because I wasn't sure whether that would appeal to a lot of people, because you know, round yokes are so common in colourwork, and I just thought maybe nobody else has the same problem as me. But it was really refreshing to see so many comments from you lovely people letting me know that that was valuable to you, that you found a lot of use in seeing that list, and that you have similar issues to me. So thank you so much. And yes, a warm welcome to all of you new viewers. If you're not yet subscribed, I would highly appreciate a subscribe. And yes, thank you so much for being here. I have a relatively short podcast episode for you today because I've been a little bit monogamous, but we have a giveaway, we have a finished object, and we have 2 works in progress and a little bit of educational chat at the end about sponsored test knits. So let's get the giveaway out the way first. I have this beautiful skein of yarn that is relatively true to colour here, and that I actually dyed myself, I want to say probably in 2020, when I had a go at everything because I had loads of time on my hands. And I dyed this yarn with acid dyes. It is a merino silk 60/40 blend. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's really drapey and it's so beautiful. And I actually stocked some of this yarn in one of my local yarn shops, but it is currently in a sort of closing down situation. So I received all this yarn back, and I would like to give one skein to one of my lovely viewers, because I actually was really hoping to reach 1,000 subscribers within the first year of podcasting, and I've gone way past that since my last video because so many of you really enjoyed my pattern roundup. So I'm really grateful, and to say thank you, I would like to give away this skein to one of my viewers. I will also be popping in some extra bits and pieces when I come to packaging this up. Now, the only problem I have is that international shipping has become increasingly difficult. I'm aware of this because my family lives in Switzerland, and it's just really hard to send things abroad. There's a lot of paperwork to be filled in, there might be customs and taxes to be paid, and it's very expensive to send abroad as well. So I will only be sending this to somebody here in the UK. So if you are in the UK, you can win this skein of yarn, or if you don't like this colour, I'm not going to be offended, you can win 2 patterns of your choice on Ravelry. If you are abroad and you win, you will just win 2 patterns of your choice on Ravelry. I won't give you the option of the physical prize as well. So it depends entirely on who the random number generator will pick. So if you would like to be in with a chance of winning this, please leave me a comment down below letting me know where you're watching from. Don't worry, don't be too specific. A rough area, like I'm telling you, I'm in West Wales. That's absolutely fine. Just give me a rough area where you're watching from. And then when I draw a winner, if they're in the UK, they get a choice. If they're abroad, they just get the 2 patterns on Ravelry. The one condition linked to this, actually 2 conditions. The first one is you need to be subscribed, and the second one is that you need to be reachable either on Instagram or on Ravelry so we can discuss the win for you. I will be announcing the winner in next podcast episode, which could be anywhere between 1 and 3 weeks from today. I don't really have a regular filming schedule, so before I film the next episode, I will draw a winner, and I will be announcing the winner on screen and verbally in the next video. I will never be commenting on your comment or replying to your comment saying that you've won something, and I'll also never be asking for money from you. So please be safe, because I know there's a lot of, bots and situations when it comes to giveaways. I will only be announcing it on the next video. But yes, that is the giveaway. So I really, really hope that you will like this skein of yarn or some patterns that have inspired you, maybe even a pattern that I shared recently. And yeah, thank you for being here, and thank you so much for over 1,000 subscribers. Let's jump into finished objects because I have one to share with you, and I'm wearing it, and it is my Inge cardigan by Famke from Mipithelabel, which was a test knit that I completed, I don't know, maybe 5 days ago or so. And I knit mine in a combination of Drops Soft Tweed in the shade Marble Dreams and Drops Brushed Alpaca Silk in the shade Marzipan. And sorry if I'm looking down, the dogs are right by my feet and I'm a little bit worried that they might knock the tripod. So I knit size 4. Famke very kindly allowed the testers to pick whichever size they wanted to knit after the application. So I applied, I think, for size 3, but I decided to go up to a size 4 because I think size 3 gave me just under 20 centimetres of positive ease, and I've recently discovered that I like 25-26 centimetres of positive ease in my garments. So I went for size 4, which was predicted to give me 29 centimetres of positive ease. And I did get gauge and I measured my blocked garment, and it is on point when it comes to the dimensions. I think it shrunk a tiny bit in length, but I could have easily adjusted that just by pulling a bit when I was blocking it. And that is when I made the realisation that for a cardigan I actually don't need that much positive ease. This is very, very oversized on me. If I show you here, you can see my body comes to there. And that is a lot of ease, especially when I wear it open. So the only modifications I made to this, and it's still in testing, it will be out in January, so maybe there will be an adjustment to this. I found the neckline to be extremely big. It is still quite large, but I picked up 1 out of 2 rows along this slanted section here, and I think I was supposed to pick up 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4. So I removed quite a few pickup stitches along this bit here, but I picked up 1 stitch per stitch in all the rest because this is a cast on edge, the back is a cast on edge, and I find it a little bit wonky looking if I pick up, you know, if I leave stitches out when I pick up out of a straight edge. But out of a slanted edge, I found it was easy to pick up fewer stitches, and that is what I have done. So the neckline is a little bit smaller than in the pattern, but actually probably isn't because this is a very heavy yarn combination and that is pulling this down. And that was another error that I made, an error of judgment. I did get gauge. I knit this on 4.5mm needles, but the Drop Soft Tweed is a DK weight yarn, a pretty true DK I would say. And the Brushed Alpaca Silk is, to me, a little bit like 2 strands of mohair. Now, Famke used a combination of a worsted weight and a lace weight mohair, which to me sounded on paper like it was going to be a good substitute, but actually, come to think of it, it is much, much, much too dense. And it was really, really hard to knit this sweater on 4.5mm needles. I found it really, really hard on my hands, and it has caused me a little bit of shoulder pain and hand pain and stuff. But it is, yeah, it's very oversized, and you start, if you've not been here before, I'll quickly walk you through the process. So you start off by casting on this saddle shoulder, which you can actually block, and then you can use that as a swatch, which is what I did. And she tells you the gauge in this specific pattern, which is like a mock cable that later on then runs down the sleeve. You then pick up stitches and work, you know, various short rows on the back and on the front. I'm going to just try and turn and show you the upper back. It is really beautiful, but as you can see, there is some shaping happening here, and there are some short rows in the upper sleeve, and that just sits too far down. Like my armpit is there, that just sits too far down. It's just that little bit too big. It is really beautiful. I actually really like how it looks on screen. But I think I have decided that I'm going to gift this to my lovely friend Emily from Emily Knits, because she has a bigger bust circumference than me, and I think it might just fit on her a little bit better. But it is a bit of a shame because it's so cozy, it's so warm. I love this texture pattern. So it is interrupted by these lateral braids that you actually do with a crochet hook, and there are several different pattern panels happening. And yeah, if I give this to her, which now I'm looking at myself on screen, sorry Emily, I'm a little bit torn. But if I do gift this to her, then I will make myself another one, I think, because it is really cute. It's a really, really nice pattern. I highly recommend when it comes out that you look into buying this pattern. let's talk about works in progress. Now, I have quite a few works in progress. As you might know if you've been here before, I have the Moby sweater and the Rosie sweater. They're both on hold because they're both on Yarns Mipithelabel Haze, which is a blown yarn, which I've had some problems with. And I think it's just making me stall on on those two patterns entirely. And yeah, it's a little bit annoying. I need to come to a decision about those two whips, whether I want to continue on them or not, because I'm so fearful of changes within the yarn from one ball to the next. I spoke about this extensively last episode if you want to see more about that. But they're a bit on hold. The other pattern I'm not going to share with you today that I am still working on is the Miles shirt jacket by Rosetta that I'm making for my mum. I have just made, a relatively small amount of progress on it, so I don't really need to share that with you today. My first work in progress that I would like to share with you today is my piping hot sweater by Lilykate France from Lilykate Makes. I had the privilege of test knitting this sweater for her. I think it might have been 2024, maybe, or 2023 even. I'll put a picture in of my first version. And I actually met Lily while I was working on that sweater, which was very, very cool. She happened to be on holiday in my area and we went for coffee, and it was really nice. She's a lovely person. She's an amazing designer. Her patterns fit so well, and I absolutely adore everything she does. And I recently pulled mine out of sort of storage and had a look at it and tried it on again. And I love that sweater and I love the colour, and I don't think I could ever get rid of it because it's sort of linked to my memory of meeting her and hanging out and knitting together, which was really fun. But I decided I would like to make another one. And the main reason for that is that my first one is just that little bit too big. And now looking back, when I look at the pattern, she has actually added in a few tips and tricks on things that you should choose specifically for this pattern, which I think came up within the test knit. So this is obviously a minor risk you go into when you take part in a test knit, that these things don't come up until after the test knit, therefore I couldn't incorporate them into my own version. But the first thing that she mentions is if you are between sizes, you should size down, and I didn't. I am between size 2 and 3 in Lily's patterns, and I sized up to a size 3. So that's problem number one. So mine is a little bit wide, especially on the neckline, so you can kind of see my vest underneath it, which you can with this as well because it's a bit too big. But yeah, the neckline's a bit wide and the whole garment is just that little bit too big, in the sense that it is kind of crossing the line between this is oversized and you've purchased the wrong size, because it looks like a purchased sweater. The second thing that Lily mentions in her pattern now that I don't think was there when we were doing the test knit is that you should choose a lightweight yarn. So the yarn that she used in her sample is Dye Gilpin's Lalland DK, which I believe is a lamb's wool that is woolen spun. So it's very, very lightweight. And for that reason, the whole garment doesn't tend to stretch once it's finished. And this garment's got some really nice shoulder details, and otherwise the whole drop of the shoulder will just be a bit too far down. And for that reason, she recommends a lightweight yarn. And again, it's not something I used. I used a yak blend that I bought from Wonderwool Wales, which is a yarn show. It didn't have a label, so I didn't even know if it was pure yak or if it had other fibres in there. And for that reason, I only discovered after finishing the whole garment that it's quite a slick yarn and it's relatively weighty. It's not like super weighty. I think it was a relatively standard meterage for a DK weight yarn, but it just it increased the size of the sweater again, is what I'm trying to say. So I took those two tips into account, and this is my second take on the piping hot sweater. Look at that! Isn't that just incredible? I am so happy with how this is turning out. And now I have a Pearl who wants to take part. I think it's mostly because the neighbour's dog just barked, but she also matches this sweater really well. Okay, good girl. Get down, get down. Come on. She just really likes yarn at the moment. Come on, get down. Good girl. So I am making mine in, the main colour is Sirdar Haworth Tweed, which is actually a 50-50 wool acrylic blend, but it feels like a pure wool. and it has 165 meters or 160 meters, something like that, per 50 grams. So it is a very long meterage for a DK weight yarn, so it's perfect for this pattern. And the contrast color that I'm using is a yarn I had in my stash, which is, I think, Yarn Art Flowers, which is a cotton acrylic blend. So totally different type of yarn, but I just really wanted a hot pink. It looks a bit more orange on screen, but it is a hot coral pink. And I wanted that for the piping, because it's called a piping hot sweater. Because initially I was going to do a sort of pale pistachio green. And then I thought that's just a bit too similar to my first version. So let's go for something really bright. And that is what I am doing. I really hope you can't hear all the commotion that my dogs are creating. If you can't, I do apologise, but they are my co-hosts and they're just here. So you start off by making these saddle shoulders. If you're not familiar with the pattern, you start by making these saddle shoulders, and all the piping is done in intarsia, so you're going to need little bobbins. And I've kind of attached them here. The bottom ones are just dangling away, but it's not a difficult type of intarsia, so don't worry about that. Once you've done the saddles, you pick up for the front and the back, and you work short rows within the front and the back to create this really beautiful shaping. And then you do the piping on the body. There is some shaping in the underarm as well, which you can't really see because it's a bit bunched up. And then you join in the round. And then the sleeves have quite a lot of short rows in them as well. It's just an excellent fit. And if you've been here for a while, you will know I've struggled so much with fit lately that I'm just really excited for this one, because I think this one is going to be the one this year. I really hope. You finish the neckline, which I've already done because I like to jump ahead of necklines, by picking up stitches for the front and the back separately, because you actually did the shoulder all the way to here, and there's a little bit of facing in the shoulder that you fold inwards and that you seam on. Sorry, there's an end there. That you seam on the inside, and you work the front neckline and the back neckline separately, and then you seam them on here. And it's a really neat, really beautiful finish. And yeah, I cannot wait to wear this. That's all I want to work on, but I should be working on the Miles shirt jacket, but that one hurts my hands and hurts my shoulder. I've really discovered that the thicker the yarn, the thicker the needle, the more pain I get in my shoulders. My second work in progress that I would like to share with you today that's had a lot of work done to it is the Sammy Slipover by Kat from Kat and Lenny. I'm going to show you a picture on screen, but I'm also going to show you how far I am on mine. Just hold it there. There we are. Look how absolutely stunning this is. So this is a top-down slipover that you start with a collar. You then work this little sort of tuck detail, and then you do this saddle shoulder kind of construction increases with short rows to lower the front neck like that. And then you work the back and the front flat with lots of increases for a really nice sort of shaping on the underarm. Once you've joined this on the underarm, it'll be plain sailing in the round with ribbing at the bottom. And then the rib on the armholes actually features a really neat detail at the underarm, where you will be doing some central double decreases that are a little bit like a V-neck. So I think that's really cool. It's got that really cute detail there and this really pretty and neat detail on the collar as well. And I'm absolutely loving working on this. And one of the reasons I'm loving working on this is the yarn, and I want to talk to you about the yarn. This is the absolutely gorgeous combination I am using. This here, the bottom one, is the Highland wool, which is 100% wool. And the top one is cashmere mohair, which is 49% mohair, 36% silk and 15% cashmere. And this yarn is from a company called Knit and Note, and I'll have to put on screen ad gifted. I received this yarn for free for this test knit, which is so highly appreciated. If you've been here for a while, you will know that I like budget friendly yarns. I don't tend to spend a lot of money on individual projects just because I'm a fast knitter and it would get very, very expensive, because I can make 3 or 4 garments in a month. And for that reason, I will normally not splash out on anything with cashmere in it. But I got this yarn for nothing from Knit and Note. And yes, thank you so much, Knit and Note, for sponsoring this test knit and allowing me to have a chance to work with this gorgeous yarn. This is a really soft, really squishy Highland wool. It is completely next to skin soft for me. And I am very sensitive to mohair. I think I became less sensitive when I wore a lot of mohair. You can kind of desensitize yourself a little bit, but I've kind of stopped wearing a lot of mohair and I've become much more sensitive again. And I would say, like, on my neck, it's still a little bit prickly, but that's just my neck. Everywhere else is absolutely fine. And so this has got a relatively high content of silk anyway, and then on top of that it's also got the cashmere, so the actual kid mohair, there's not that much in terms of percentage in there. And it is absolutely beautiful, and it has this little bit of a marl to it as well. So yes, I'm so excited to keep working on this. It is gliding off the needles. It is really, really nice. I'm really enjoying this project, and it just creates this beautiful fabric. Oh, and the colours are called Hay Grey for both of the shades, by the way. But they have some absolutely gorgeous different shades. And I ordered it from Knit and Note, and I think they're based in Norway, and it came within a week. So really, really good shipping, good service, cannot fault them. And yeah, really excited to be working on this slip over. And I think it's going to be such a wardrobe staple when I'm finished. So those are my whips for today. As I said, I haven't got that much to talk about, but I would like to briefly talk to you about sponsored test knits, because if you're new here, you might not know, I like to share a bit of educational content on my channel. I especially like to share tips and tricks and things that have worked for me, help you sort of maybe not make the same mistakes that I've made, or learn from my experience so that you don't have to make the experience yourself. And I like to talk about really specific things like different sensory needs and different constructions and all of the above. But today I would like to talk about sponsored test knits, because I remember the first time I came across sponsored test knits, I believe might have been when I was watching Caroline's Knits, who is a podcaster here on YouTube, and I used to watch her podcast fairly frequently. That was maybe during the pandemic, possibly, and she did a lot of sponsored test knits. And she would just say this yarn was received for free for the test knit. And I had started doing test knits for various designers, and I never had free yarn, and I was just curious, how does this work? So I actually got in touch with her, and she let me know that because she is Danish and she test knits a lot for Danish designers who are running their test knits in Danish, she was often eligible to get free yarn for those test knits, because a lot of Scandinavian yarn companies are actually very willing to send out free yarn for test knits. They often work in collaboration with designers. They see value in giving free yarn to test knitters so that they can promote their yarn in their patterns and in their samples. And I think it's really, really cool, because test knitting takes a lot of time, doesn't it? And we all do it because we enjoy being part of a group and working in collaboration with a designer. But like I've illustrated with the piping hot sweater, through no fault of anyone, my sample isn't perfect because of things that came up in the test knit, and that's completely normal. That is what test knitting is for. But you never get paid for test knitting. It would never be possible for designers to pay people. So when you can get free yarn for the test knit, I think it's really, really nice. So what I've learned from that is that if you are based in Scandinavia, or you work with a large designer from Scandinavia, you're much, much more likely to receive free yarn. But I would like to share with you a few tips on how to get sponsored test knits. First of all, I want to talk to you about 3 different types of sponsored test knits, and then we'll talk about a few tips and tricks that I've got, how I managed to get this specific sponsored test knit. So in my eyes, there are 3 types of sponsored test knits. The first one, which is relatively common, is that you might get a discount code from a specific yarn shop or from a certain brand that the designer used for their sample. They might have received the yarn for knitting their sample prior to designing it, and the designer, the yarn company offered yarn support in a sort of discount form straight away. Or they might have just knit that garment in a yarn that they bought themselves and then approached the company. These things can happen either way, but the bottom line is you might get a discount code when you're selected as a tester, and it could be anywhere between 10 and 50%. I've seen various different figures. So that's one way. The other way is that there might be sponsorships for a core group of test knitters within a test knit. So maybe half of the testers will get sponsored yarn, the other half don't get the sponsored yarn. And that is often done in that way because designers only get support from the yarn company for a certain number, and they want to give that yarn to test knitters that they've worked with in the past that they trust and they know are going to complete the item. And I've worked with Kat before, so I got the free yarn, I think mostly due to the fact that she knows me, she trusts me, and she knows I'll provide decent feedback. So these kind of test knits are fairly common. I think Ozetta does them like that. I've seen test calls from her where you get free yarn if you've test knit in the last 6 months, for example. So that is a fairly common way that sponsored test knits can work. And then the third type is where all the test knitters get free yarn. And I have done 4 sponsored test knits in my sort of knitting career, if you want to call it that, over the last few years. I have done 2 test knits where all the testers got the yarn, and I've done 2 test knits where some got the yarn. The 2 that I did where all the testers got the yarn were for Anne-Katrin Stoll. She often works with Scandinavian companies, even though she is based in Germany, but I think that is how her sponsored test knits come about. And I've never been selected for an adult size garment, but when she started designing children's things, and I really enjoy knitting children's things as gifts, I signed up twice and I got the sponsored test knit both times, and I think that's because there's just a smaller amount of demand for a test knit and even for pattern sales in children's items. But I thought maybe that way I can establish a bit of a relationship and an element of trust, and maybe in future she will select me for an adult size garment as well. With Kat, I test knit a garment earlier this year for a children's cardigan. That wasn't sponsored, I just tested it. And then I got a sponsored test knit from her, and then I did a test knit that wasn't sponsored, and now I've got a sponsored test knit again. So I've had continued interaction with Kat over the last year. So that leads me to my top tips on how to get a sponsored test knit. I mean, some of them apply to just getting a test knit full stop, which are, for example, having good photos on Instagram, because designers will look at your Instagram page. Especially having nice photos that are modelled are hugely valuable to designers. So having nice modelled photos on your Instagram is I think is one of the most important things. And then working with a designer continuously, so being a serial test knitter is definitely something that will help you get sponsored test knits if you know a designer does the occasional sponsored test knit like Kat does, for example. Being a consistent and picky test knitter will also help you. So I think it is very, very good and very desirable from designers if you pick up tiny little mistakes, little nuances, little errors that other test knitters have not picked up on. Those are things that designers hugely value in test knitters. And I just happen to naturally be very good at finding inconsistencies in text, finding errors, and yeah, I'm just naturally drawn to that. So my language skills are pretty decent, I think. So I'm just good at analysing text, making sure it's consistent. And I've also designed some things myself, so I know what tech editors do to patterns and what to look out for, especially when it comes to sort of consistencies. I'm also pretty good at figuring out knitting maths, so I'm quite good at spotting errors in that way. And I'm a fast knitter, so I get straight in there. I try to find the errors early before other test knitters. That is also something that sort of highlights you a little bit with a designer. And I really try to complete the test knits whenever I can. Don't get me wrong, there have been occasions when I've not been able to get gauge, where life happened and I just couldn't finish the test knit, but I've always been good at communicating that as well. So being a picky test knitter, really finding nitpicky little errors is very desirable. Finishing in time is desirable. Having nice modelled photos on your Instagram or Ravelry or both is desirable. And working with a test knitter in a repeated fashion over a time period. So they get to know you, they get to know your Instagram handle, they know it's you, they know you've tested it for them before, and they will pick you again. That is something that helps as well. So those are sort of my tips and tricks on how to become a sponsored test knitter. I hope you have found that useful. I think it's often a little bit confusing when people, especially here on YouTube podcasts, will say, oh, ad sponsored for this test knit, but they never go into detail on why did they get this yarn? How did they get this yarn? Was it free? Or, you know, was it completely free? So for full transparency, this yarn was completely free that I received. So I got 4 balls of this and 7 balls of this, which is the amount that I had to buy, I would have had to buy for my size. So Kat basically sent me the pattern, said, go on this website, buy the exact amount of yarn that you need, and then at checkout put in this specific code, and that will erase the entire cost. The only thing I had to pay for was shipping. So yeah, I really hope you found this useful. I like to just share things that other people might not share, not because they don't want to share it, they might just not think about, you know, that people might want to know about these things. So I hope this is useful for you. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I know it's a little bit of a shorter one in terms of my knitting content. I hope that you will leave me a comment down below so that you can win this yarn as well as some other bits and pieces or some patterns. And if you're not yet subscribed, I would really, really appreciate a subscribe and a like and a comment. And thank you so, so much for all the support, especially over the last few weeks. It's made me so happy. I'm so grateful to be here. I'm so enjoying making videos for YouTube. What can you expect from me in the near future? Well, more podcasts, obviously, because that's my favourite thing to film. But I'm also planning to do a winter knitting plans to talk to you about how well or not so well my autumn knitting plans went. And I have got my next pattern roundup video lined up in my head, and I've got a few patterns ready. And that again is going to be a sort of slightly more specific pattern roundup to my needs and things that I'm really attracted to. And I think you really enjoyed that last time, so I hope you will enjoy that again. And yes, with that, I will leave you with a bit of footage from my beach walk from last night. Thank you so, so much for watching, and see you soon. Happy knitting.